Keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
All right, and welcome to the GSMC Football Podcast. This episode is brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network, and I'd say for the final time, I am your host, Jesse Tapia. So yes, this is my final day here at GSMC, hosting all these shows that I do, and we got a special one today. We have Tate on today for this final show.
How are you guys doing?
Feels a little weird doing the intro a little bit different today.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
How does it feel? This is going to be your last ride.
It's a little sad, I guess, is considering, there's nothing better than coming into here and talking football, basketball for whatever shows that I did.
You're moving on to bigger and better things in life.
Yeah.
And but it is a definite honor to be part of this last episode with you.
Yeah, it should definitely be a fun one, too. We have a lot of fun on our last few episodes that we've done.
Boy, you got a nice going away present, though. A fun game for Thursday Night Football. And Thursday night is normally a boring game.
Yeah, especially I was really happy about the fact that they were going back and forth in the first half yesterday.
Man, they really... offensive. If you're into offensive football, you got a present this game.
Yeah, and I'm sure the NFL was very happy too because they're moving the game more towards Big 12. Shootout type football now.
This was definitely TCU versus Iowa
State or something like that. Yeah.
Oklahoma State.
So we'll get into the game for the first segment. Let me tell you what the rest of the show is going to be about. We'll do Rams, Vikings for the first. Second segment, we're going to get into the matchups going on Sunday. We won't get into the Sunday night matchup, given I want to preview that. For the third segment, we got Baltimore heading to Pittsburgh Sunday night. And then for the fourth segment, Tate and I will pretty much talk about any other news going on in the NFL, or maybe we'll get into some other topics. I think this is where the Frank Gore to the Hall of Fame conversation started from me. We did an episode like that. Well, that's how today's show will go. Let me get into the stats and score for yesterday's game. You had the Rams winning that one 38-31. Jared Goff, people talk as if he's a system quarterback or try to push that narrative. I think yesterday did well to dispel that. He threw for 465 yards, 5 touchdowns, completed 26 out of his 33 passes. Todd Gurley, 17 carries, 83 yards there, no rushing touchdowns. Looking at the receiving numbers for the Rams, Cooper Kupp, Eastern Washington alum, 9 receptions, 162 yards, 2 touchdowns. Killed 2 of my fantasy teams since I was playing against him. Brandon Cooks, 7 receptions, 116 yards there and a touchdown. Robert Woods, continuing to play well at home, 5 receptions, 101 yards, 1 touchdown. And Todd Gurley getting it done through the receiving end. Also, 4 receptions, 73 yards, and a touchdown there. Looking at the Vikings, Kirk Cousins, 422 yards, 3 touchdowns. Dalvin Cook ran the ball 10 times for 20 yards, was on a bit of a snap count given he's coming back from a hamstring injury. And then receiving, Adam Thielen, 8 receptions, 135 yards and a touchdown. Stephon Diggs, 11 receptions, 123 yards, no touchdowns there. And then you had Aldrick Robinson, efficient as can be, 2 receptions, 33 yards, 2 touchdowns. You're right, you mentioned it earlier. This was unlike any other Thursday night game that we've had so far.
No, this game... Most times when a Thursday night game comes on, I can't lie, a lot of times I'm doing other things. I'm watching the game. It's kind of in the background. I catch a few plays here and there because it's not football at its highest level.
Yeah.
This game, totally different. These guys came to play. It felt like there was playoff implications going on here. These guys were really going at it.
Yeah, definitely. I remember when the game was about to start, I got a little bit nervous because living from California and all that, the fans don't really get that good of a rap considering, California fans tend to be a bit fair weather, that we could say. So I'm watching. I'm like, wait, where are all the fans at? And I remember, wait, it's 5 o'clock. They're in LA. I mean, they'll get there in an hour.
In California, it's like, we got to go have some mimosas. We're going to have a little happy hour. Then we'll get to the game. No one wants to get to the game too early.
Yeah, and then eventually they did start to fill it out. But, I mean, like you said, I think this was good for the NFL here, too, considering, I mean, I feel if you pay attention to social media, Twitter and all that, I mean, it's usually a lot of complaints. Oh, this game stinks. Like, no one's scoring. This is awful. Why do we have Thursday night football? And you mentioned, kind of felt like it was a playoff atmosphere here. And I'd say, I mean, going into this season, these two teams probably were regarded as the two best in the NFC. Maybe if you liked Philly a little bit more, but.
When I was looking at this game, and before the game started, I really wasn't that excited about it. Originally, I took Minnesota to win this game because they were coming off that upset loss. So I felt like Minnesota had something to prove, but then I started thinking about the fact that Minnesota had to come cross country and play on a short week, and I thought, you know what, this could be a boring game. And man, it seemed like Minnesota had something to prove. They were going to show you that they were not a fluke or that they weren't overhyped, and the Rams were there just saying, hey, we have arrived.
Yeah, and you mentioned that. I mean, the Vikings, I'd say on offense, we were talking about it a little bit before the show, but they played about as good as football as you can on offense, I'd say.
Yeah, I say they played a perfect game.
Yeah, I mean, Kirk Cousins threw for over 400 yards. The rushing game wasn't really great, but other than that, I mean, they were moving the ball up and down the field.
If you told me, if you took Minnesota and you said they're going to go cross country and they're going to play any team in the NFL and they're going to score 31 points, chances are they're going to win. And you're going to say, oh, Kirk Cousins is going to have a banner day and he's going to light it up with very few mistakes. There's no way I see them losing.
Yeah, and it's just, I guess, the only counter to that is the Rams were just, I guess, a little bit better. I mean, Goff, 465 yards, 5 touchdowns. That's about as great as a game as you can have, I'd say.
I agree. I mean, he had Cousins had a perfect game. So what? I mean, when you say perfect game, you say 36 for 50 for 422 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 0 interceptions. That's a winning formula.
Yeah.
So what did Goff have? If Cousins had a perfect game, what did Goff have? I mean, it was just
I don't think we even have
world.
That might just be it because I don't think we have a term, I guess, for anything that's better than perfect. But,
yes.
I mean, yeah, it was ridiculous. Watching it yesterday, I really like the way the Rams run their offense. Sean McVay, the head coach, they were talking about it during the middle of the game too. Pretty much Goff's first option on every play always seems to be open, and it's kind of ridiculous how I haven't seen an offense like this in a while where it works out literally how they drew it up each play.
Yeah, I don't understand how this team 2 years ago turned into this new current team.
I could tell you how.
I was setting you up. There's two things that Jesse loves most of all. The two things most closest to Jesse's heart. That's Jeff Fisher, and then that's that guy from Chicago. What's his name?
Oh, it's not from Chicago, but offensive coordinator from Atlanta, Steve.
No. The guy from Chicago, formerly by way of Miami, by way of Denver.
I don't know.
Quarterback.
Oh, Jay Cutler. Yeah.
He loves him some Cutler.
Yeah, I love Cutler. Jeff Fisher and I have not a great relationship, I'd say. I've never forgiven him I think he ruined Vince Young. And you look at this Rams team, I mean, everyone was saying Goff was a bust in that first year. And then, I mean, McVay comes in and Goff is on his way to becoming one of the better quarterbacks in the league.
This is a great example of why sometimes you don't write a quarterback off because maybe the quarterback's just in the wrong system.
Yeah. And I mean, you look at Goff, his first year, yeah, it wasn't great. And then McVay comes in. I mean, this whole team has kind of just picked it up. You mentioned earlier, before we started the show, the defense is kind of worrying you because I remember we had some talks about the Rams in the offseason making all the moves and you were kind of hesitant. You still hesitant about them?
Absolutely. I looked at this team, and before the season started, Jesse's been very high on the Rams, and I said, I am not. And the reason why I was not, because of the fact that the team that traditionally wins the offseason tends to never make it to the Super Bowl. And I look at this team and I look at this amazing game that the Rams put out there. And I said, when I first watched it, I'm like, wow, maybe I made a mistake. But then when I stepped back and I looked at this game and I really went back and I watched the game, I'm like, nope, I still stand by my words. And the reason why I stand by my words is this. You can't make the Super Bowl giving up 31 points a game. This team defensively, the offense has come together and the offense is quite spectacular. But that defense is, they're Superman on offense and Clark Kent on defense, and you can't give up, not in the NFC, you're not going to be able to give up 28, 30 points in a game, in a playoff game, and think you're going to make the Super Bowl. I'm still not sold on them. Now, I'm not writing them off yet because it's way early in the season. But unless they get this defense taken care of, they just seem like a team that's built for the regular season, but not built for the playoffs.
And you make sense there because, you look at the Rams, I think going into this game, they only had about 4 total sacks, and I'd say that's a bit of an underachievement considering you got Aaron Donald and Ndamukong Suh, who I think are probably 2 out of the 3 best defensive tackles in the league, with the third being Fletcher Cox. But I do agree with you there. I noticed yesterday in the game, too, as far as their secondary, you had Marcus Peters and Sam Shields basically trying to bait Kirk Cousins into throwing an interception, and I don't think you can really do that with a guy like Kirk or any top quarterback, considering those guys can make those throws and they're smart enough to put it in spots where you're just not going to be able to get it. I remember I think it was the first touchdown to Thielen where Peters was in position ready to pick it off, but Cousins just put it barely above him to the point where it's getting to Thielen and Peters isn't going to be able to take it off.
Okay, first off, I'm going to use 2 things here. The first thing is when you have an offense, a defense where you're trying to bait people, but you're not succeeding. You're like, okay, throw it. I'm going to leave it open for Cousins to throw it here so I can go in and get the interception. Well, Cousins actually threw it where they wanted him to, but, it's completed. That's not going to work. The other problem is I don't mind and don't care about the fact that they're not getting the sacks. The fact of the matter is they're not even roughing up the quarterback. They're not putting enough pressure on the quarterback. You're not going to give a guy like Aaron Rodgers or Matt Ryan or Cam Newton. You're not going to give those guys all day back there without roughing them up and think you're going to make it out of the playoffs. That's my problem.
Yeah, that's true. Because, you look at the NFC, I'd say the NFC currently is the conference with the best quarterbacks. You just mentioned it. You got Rodgers, Newton, you got Breeze there, Cousins, you got Wentz coming into it. It's not like the AFC where you got Brady and then the other guys are basically, you got Rivers and Roethlisberger. Those guys are pretty much at the end of their careers now.
And if I said, okay, there's a playoff game and it's Drew Brees, but you're not going to put a lot of pressure on Drew Brees and he's going to have plenty of time to throw, I'm telling you Drew Brees is going to win. If you say the same thing about Aaron Rodgers, I'm going to say Aaron Rodgers is going to win.
Yeah, because this thing, those guys got that Super Bowl experience. They know, well, even then, I don't think you really need experience for those guys. But like you said, you don't put pressure on them. They're just going to pick your defense apart because there's someone who's going to get open.
And that's a prime example of what we were talking about this earlier with the Cowboys. And you asked me about what's going on with Dak. And if you don't want me to talk about that right now.
Fine.
But one of the things that's going on with Dak is, I don't know, like you asked, is Dak a bust? And I say no. And the reason why that is Dak is getting sacked 5 times a game, but also Dak is getting clearly hit another 10 times a game. They're putting a lot of pressure on Dak, and it's disrupting him, and it's affecting his play. The Rams have to be able to do just that every week, disrupt their opponent's quarterback, and I'm not seeing that right now.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I was going to say, so even though that offense has been spectacular, I give their offense an A+, and I'll give their defense a C-, and that's not a good formula.
Yeah, I can agree with that. And let's move on to the Vikings real quick before we move on. Do the Vikings kind of worry you a bit, given they're 1-2-1? It's week 4, but it's always good to, I guess, start a conversation about it.
It's still too early to worry about Minnesota. When I look at Minnesota and I say Kirk Cousins, he looks good. The thing that worries me again about Minnesota is Minnesota had this all-world defense last year, and it's no longer an all-world defense. And now you're in a division where now this year Aaron Rodgers is playing, even though he may be injured. The Bears are a much tougher team, and then you know there's a lot of great teams in the NFC.
Yeah, because you look at it. Sure, you gave up 38 to the Rams. I mean, the Rams have been putting up 30 plus points since like the middle of last year. But you look at it, you also gave up 29, I think it was, to a one-legged Rodgers. And what's worst out of all of it is you gave up 27 to a Bills team, not in Buffalo, but in Minnesota. So you're right. This defense isn't really what we expected this season.
You don't give up anything to Buffalo. Buffalo on the road. If you're giving up a bunch of yards to Buffalo on the road, there is cause for pause.
Yeah, and it's not like Buffalo has like old Stevie Johnson or anything like that. Josh Allen's throwing to Kelvin Benjamin, Zay Jones. I wouldn't say those are top end receivers by any means.
Yes, if you're getting torched.
Yeah,
it's way too early to worry about Minnesota, but there's enough to raise an eyebrow to be a little concerned.
And I'd say this isn't a year where they can kind of take their time throughout the year to figure it out. Because like I see, you got Rodgers who's playing on one leg but still lighting it up. And then you got that Bears team who might have one of the top defense in the league, given how many times they get to the quarterback and forcing turnovers and all.
Yeah, no, and you look at some of the other NFC teams. I mean, from Atlanta to, hey, even Tampa Bay is going to give you trouble out there. There's some good teams out there that you can't afford to drop, a couple games early in the season.
Yeah.
Especially games that you should win. The games you should win, like Buffalo at home, is a no-brainer. You never lose those games.
Yeah, because you mentioned it too. It's not just winning your division, because like that's not going to always work out considering you got those tough teams there in Green Bay and Chicago, but it's also the wild card. I remember when I made my predictions before the season started, I had Green Bay getting in, I think, as the last wild card team, and I had them getting in at 11-5. So you're going to have to be pretty much tip-top shape to get into the playoffs out of the NFC. AFC is a much different story, but maybe we'll get into that a little bit later.
All right.
So we're going to go ahead and wrap it up here. Next segment, Tate and I are going to go through each game besides the Sunday night one, given I want to preview that one for the third segment. We'll go through each early game and talk a little bit about each team and make our picks. So stay tuned, and we will be right back.
The average sedan is built with a steel frame and equipped with 6 airbags. Remember this the next time you see someone walking. Drivers, be aware. Pedestrians don't have armor. A message from the California Office of Traffic Safety. The average SUV has 2 blind spots, weighs between 4,000 and 6,000 pounds, and takes about 6 seconds to stop. Remember this the next time you're on foot. Pay attention, people. Pedestrians don't have armor. A message from the California Office of Traffic Safety.
All right, and welcome back to the GSMC Football Podcast. Just a reminder, I got Tate on the show with me today. We spent that first segment talking about that Thursday night football game between the Rams and Vikings. The Rams winning that one 38-31. And now we move on to talk about the early games on Sunday, make our picks, and give some thoughts on some of these teams. So let's just get into it. We got, for the first game, the Bengals and Falcons. This one's in Atlanta. The Bengals, I'm not sure what to think of them, given I kind of have trust issues with that team. What do you think of Cincinnati so far?
Okay. I have major trust issues with them, but they're balling. They are playing. I kind of feel like right now they're healthy and they're playing above their ability. I keep waiting on them to fall back. Do you feel that way the same way?
I kind of feel the same way, but I feel like it's not right for us to feel that way because, like, the last 2 years, Andy Dalton hasn't had an offensive line. I checked the stats from Pro Football Reference. He got sacked a total of 80 times the last 2 seasons. Before that, he was never really sacked that much, and they were a consistent playoff team. Granted, I mean, they get in and they get out fairly quick. But, I mean, this has been a decent regular season team with Andy Dalton. But it's just there's something about the Bengals, like I said, that you just can't trust for some reason.
I never trust the Bengals. And I'm sorry, they haven't made enough adjustments over the years to tell me that they're not the same team, the Bengals teams of old. AJ Green, you got to respect him. They're going to run the game. They're going to run the ball. They are that solid C+, B- type student, but they're never going to be valedictorian there.
Maybe it's just the quarterback, Andy Dalton, because I feel like Dalton kind of falls into that category of a Ryan Tannehill, a Blake Bortles, a Derek Carr type, where sometimes they're going to show they have all the talent in the world. And like, okay, maybe these teams have something at quarterback. And then sometimes it's like last week against Carolina, Dalton throws for over 300 yards, but also throws 4 interceptions.
Yeah, it feels like he never quite puts it all together.
Yeah.
He's that guy that has all the talent in the world, but also he has those lapses in judgment that really has cost that team, and it's still early. Those lapses in judgment can cost them 2-3 games, and that takes them out of the playoff picture.
Yeah, and then you got the Falcons who, I mean, lost to the Eagles, lost to the Saints in overtime last week. I can't remember who they played week 2. I think it might have been Carolina, actually. They played week 2, beat them there. I mean, Atlanta they should be much better than what their record says, but also another team where it's kind of like you can't really understand what's going on there, I'd say.
Now, see, this is where I disagree with you on. I like Atlanta. Atlanta, I think, is super solid. The fact that when you look at the record, they have played – everybody they've played are serious playoff contenders. There's no scrubs in there, like we were talking about the other game of losing to Buffalo. There's no gimme games that they have lost.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you this. Matt Ryan is one of the reasons why, like, I picked Matt Ryan up on my fantasy team.
Yeah.
And the reason why I picked Matt Ryan up is because of the fact that every time he gets a new offensive coordinator, the first year he has this big relapse. But the second year, he really takes off. And if you look at this last game, it's like he finally clicked with his offensive coordinator, and they have been moving that ball. And they're a solid team. Yeah. I like them as far as their receiving core, their running game. They're a tough team.
Yeah, they've been playing better. As far as this game, I'm going to go with Atlanta, given them the home team, and I just think they're better than Cincinnati. Are you going with Cincinnati or Atlanta?
I am 100% taking Atlanta.
So we'll move on from that one. We move on to Tampa Bay heading to Chicago. I think this is the end for Ryan Fitzpatrick. I think that they're going to start him this week, given you don't want to start Jameis against a defense as tough as Chicago's in his first game back. And I think Fitzpatrick's going to have that about 4-3 interception type game here.
Okay. I host an MMA show, so could it be that the Bears defense is kind of like Khabib Nurmagomedov?
They might be. I mean,
that is one nasty defense.
Yeah, like as far as like the pass rush, the linebackers been playing well, and the defense, the secondary's been picking everyone off. I mean, there's no real true weakness, I'd say, right now.
Okay, here's my statement: if Fitzmagic shows up and he lights up the Bears, it's over for Jameis Winston. The rest of the year, Fitzpatrick will be the starting quarterback. But if that Bears defense gets off, do not be surprised if he gets pulled. This is a make or break game for him because of that defense. If he can keep Khalil Mack and the rest of those guys off of him, and he puts up 400 yards and 3 touchdowns, you have something.
I completely agree with that. I mean, I'm expecting Fitzpatrick to have that bad game, but if you're able to go into Soldier Field, like you said, against Mack and all those other guys and line them up like you have the past 3 teams, then there's no reason to bring Jameson. I'd say even if Fitzpatrick has a bad game here or there.
Well, if he lights up the Bears, then you have to start thinking about there's something magical going on with Fitzmagic here.
It seems like, because this is the same team they had last year pretty much, just now it's a different quarterback. It seems like something's just kind of been clicking with that offense and him.
And it's kind of funny because last year I thought this was going to be the year that Tampa Bay kind of broke out and it was just kind of like fizzled out.
Yeah.
And this year it's the same team, but without Jameis Winston. And I feel like when you watch this team play, you listen to the press conferences, the players like playing with Fitzpatrick. Mm-hmm. There's a whole different level of energy that's going on there. I feel like if you polled the players privately, I think they would say they want Fitzpatrick to be the quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, you had Deshaun Jackson letting Fitzpatrick wear his clothes to the post-game press conference.
Which I love. Yeah. I loved it. I loved it big
hilarious.
Time.
I mean, Vegas is giving the Buccaneers some respect here. Chicago's only favored by 3 at home. I'm going to stick with Chicago. I'm not bold enough to ride with Fitzpatrick on this one. Who do you have?
I am going to roll the dice, and I'm actually taking Buccaneers.
I wouldn't be mad if they ended up winning this one because I think Fitzpatrick's been a real solid story this season.
This was a tough decision, but I think Fitzpatrick has been in the league long enough that he can handle pressure. I'm not expecting this all-world game of 400, 500 yards and 5 touchdowns. Mm-hmm. But I could see him having a solid game where it's like 2 or 3 touchdowns and an interception and pulling off a win.
And I'll just throw this out there before we move on to the Lions and Cowboys game. But let's say Fitzpatrick beats the Bears and plays well and ends up playing well the rest of the season and gets the Bucs into the playoffs. We could possibly have on our hands a Ryan Fitzpatrick MVP type season. I think if he plays well.
It's crazy. Bite your tongue, but it's crossed my mind. If he keeps rolling like this, how crazy would it be to see last year Nick Foles pulls off a Super Bowl and Rich Fitzpatrick pulls off an MVP? That would just be the craziest 2 years ever.
We might be living in the era of the backup quarterback. Who knows? We move on from that one. We got the Lions and Cowboys in Dallas. Both of these teams, I mean, have had one solid game, had 2 bad games. You're not really sure what to exactly think about them both. The Lions beating the Patriots last week, I think it was nice, but I think it's kind of one of those games where it's like, okay, we're playing the Pats, Patricia's old team, let's get up and actually work harder for this one. I'm not sure if that's something the Lions can sustain or if that's who the Lions actually are. As far as Dallas, we talked about Dak, or we mentioned him towards the end of the last segment. I've never been his biggest fan. I've always thought his ceiling was Alex Smith, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but I just never thought he'd be a 300-plus yard type of quarterback. But you were right mentioning how he hasn't played well, but the offensive line hasn't really given him a chance. I mean, who do you like in this game, and what do you think about both of these teams, I guess?
Okay. I think both of these teams are kind of on the same trajectory of 6 or 7 wins. Maybe the Lions have a little bit better of an upside. But for this game, do you want to give me my prediction right now? Or?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. It's really tough. With the Lions coming off of the big victory, will they have that emotional letdown with the Cowboys? Because when you look at the way the Cowboys have been playing, the Lions really are the better team. Mm-hmm. I'm going to take the Cowboys strictly because of the Lions are coming off that big win. Dallas this is a must-win game to see where they're at. If Dallas loses this one, you can write the season off for them already.
And I think I have to agree with you on this one. My heart tells me to go with the Lions, but my head tells me to go with the Cowboys. I'm going to follow my head here. I like the home team in this one. And I think Dak Prescott is kind of going to have a game where, kind of like how he did with the Giants, and he's going to step up here. So we move on from that one to the Bills and Packers game. I don't think there's really much to be said about this one. I mean, the Bills are coming off of a big win last week in Minnesota, but I'm going to go ahead and give my pick for this one. I'm going to go with the Packers. I just don't think the Bills have it in them to do it 2 weeks in a row.
I have some concerns about the Packers, and that is, how is Aaron Rodgers' leg? Mm-hmm. I really want to see how he handles this game with Buffalo. This should be an easy game for them. They're at home. I just want to see how Aaron Rodgers gets together with Randall Cobb and see how he progresses. I got Green Bay winning it, but closer than you might think.
Closer? It's possible. I mean, maybe Josh Allen can go from Minnesota to Lambeau and light it up a bit, but like I said, I'll go with the Packers too. I think it'll be not as close, I guess, as you may think.
All right, question for you. What happens if Buffalo goes into Green Bay and win and Josh Allen lights it up?
Dan, I guess we got to throw Buffalo into that conversation as far as the team who can win the AFC East, along with Miami and New England. I guess we kind of have to.
That it would change. This is that game that can really mark Buffalo as in like their coming out party.
Yeah, so we'll see what ends up happening. But if that happens, then like I said, I was really wrong about them to start the season. Move on from that one. We got Philly heading to Tennessee. Tennessee has had some, I wouldn't say problems at quarterback, but it's been a weird situation there. Mariota got hurt in their first game against Miami. They lost that one. Then they beat Houston with Blaine Gabbert. He doesn't really do much, but they still pull off the win. And then last week they beat the Jacksonville Jaguars 9-6. Last week you had Philly beating the Colts 20-16 with Carson Wentz coming back. I mean, this game isn't glorious, or how do you say, it doesn't really jump out at you, but Tennessee has somehow been grinding out these wins. Do you think they can do that here?
No. Wentz is back. This is the second game of him being back, a little bit more comfortable with the team. I just think they're just better on every aspect of the game. I'm taking Philadelphia.
Yeah, I'm taking Philly here, too. I'm going to roll with Wentz here. I think he makes them a much better team, and we kind of saw them play a lot better last week. Plus, they could be getting Alshon Jeffrey back here. And Mariota, I'm not really too convinced with him as far as whether or not he's the franchise quarterback for that team. I mean, him and Jameis, both number picks 1 and 2, I think, in 2015, haven't really panned out the way I'd say their teams wanted them to.
You could easily have a situation where pick 1 and 2 may be in serious jeopardy by the end of this year.
Yeah, that's possible. So then we move on from that one. We got Houston heading to Indianapolis. Houston has been a disappointment at 0-3. The Colts, they beat a good team in Washington. They did have a chance when they were driving down the field week 1 against Cincinnati, but Jack Doyle fumbled in the red zone. And then they lost to the Eagles last week. This game, I'm going to go with the Colts here. Houston has kind of, like I said, they just disappointed. Deshaun Watson doesn't look great, and I just think Andrew Luck makes this Colts team a lot better. I mean, what do you think of both of these teams, and then who do you have winning?
Houston is actually so far been a big disappointment to me. And when you look at the Colts, I think Andrew Luck has actually performed very well, even though I think his arm, he's kind of like Peyton Manning 2.0. I feel like his arm is just not very strong right now, but he's doing a good job. He's kind of that smart guy on the field nowadays, and I think that's just too much. I got the Colts.
Yeah, I got the Colts in this one too. And I mean, they're at home also, so that's going to play a part. Then we move on to one of the more interesting games on Sunday. You have the 3-0 Miami Dolphins. Don't really get a chance to say that much, heading to New England, playing the Patriots, who are currently 1-2. Patriots haven't looked great to start the season. Miami has looked solid. I'm not expecting any big changes here, meaning I think it's business as usual. Miami's going to end up losing in New England, even though New England hasn't really looked great to start the season. What about you?
You got Belichick, check. You got Brady. You got Gronk. I got the Dolphins winning.
You got the Dolphins?
I really do.
Even with Josh Gordon making his debut here also?
I got the Dolphins winning.
I mean, looking at both teams to start the season, it does make sense, but I figure if I were to pick Miami and I have them winning the game eventually in Miami when the Patriots come to town, I just think they're going to end up splitting this year, so I got to go with the Patriots, I think, in this one. But
here's the reason why. The Dolphins know this is an important game. This is, for the Patriots, this is just another game. But for the Dolphins, this is their statement game.
Yeah.
They need to be able to come out and show what they can do against the Patriots. They're going to be up for this game. They're going to be hyped. And the Dolphins are playing well.
Yeah,
Ryan Tannehill and the rest of that crew is playing really well. I have the Dolphins winning.
We'll see what ends up happening.
You're the Dolphins fan, and I am not a Dolphins fan.
Yeah, I mean, I'm taking each win as it comes, but I know Miami doesn't really perform well in New England, so I guess that's why I got to side with Belichick.
All right, what happens if I'm right and the Dolphins win? What's your thoughts on the Dolphins at that point?
3 games up on the Patriots. I'd say the Dolphins are a good team. I wouldn't say a good team, because if you're 3-1, you're still pretty decent. But I'd say this year is a little bit different. The Patriots have more to worry about.
And the Patriots aren't as good as people think they are. Patriots, a lot of people are their old past and the press clippings of everything what they've done in the past. But when you look at them, they really haven't been that spectacular.
Yeah.
Gronk hasn't been Gronk. The running game, I think, is lost. The defense is weak. And there's a lot of talk that there's a lot of, fracturing that's going on with Belichick and Brady. They look like a team that's fractured. That's why I'm taking the Dolphins.
And eventually all great teams do have that decline, and that just could be happening for the Patriots now. But we'll see what ends up happening. Then we move on to the last 10 o'clock Pacific time game. We got the Jets and Jaguars in Jacksonville. I'm going to go with Jacksonville here. I think the defense is going to cause a lot of havoc for Sam Darnold with him being a rookie and all. I think he's going to have a classic rookie game, meaning he'll throw a couple of picks, maybe get a touchdown in, but he won't play great.
Is Leonard Fournette playing?
He practiced fully on Thursday, I believe, so I'm assuming so he will.
If Leonard Fournette is playing, then they're going to win with ease. I think they're going to win quite comfortably.
Yeah, and I'll go with the Jags too. I mean, I don't think there's really any reason for either of us to pick the Jets on this one.
I'm sorry. There's no way I can go with them. The Jets have been a good story so far, but I just don't. I think Jacksonville's defense is better. The running game. They're at home. It's just no. I can't even do it.
And then another game I'm really looking forward to. We finally got Baker Mayfield making his first start for the Cleveland Browns, heading over to the Black Hole to face off with the Raiders. We'll be playing on that baseball field, considering the Oakland A's over in the MLB are playing good baseball. I'm going to be heading to the postseason. Do you think Baker Mayfield's going to be able to get it done on that baseball field?
Weird thing for me to say. Browns, better passing game. Browns, better running game. Browns, better defense. Right now, better coaching Browns.
I mean, you might not be wrong about that.
That's uncomfortable saying that. Right, I'm just saying right now. It may turn around for the Raiders, but right now, not only do I have the Browns winning, but I have the Browns winning big.
Winning big?
Yes.
I mean, you're right. Everything you just said is right, but it's the Browns. I'm expecting the Browns to win also, by the way. I'm not sure if it's big, but I feel like
But see, I understand you being like, it's kind of like you pet the alligator on his head, but you're a little nervous because at any second that alligator is going to bite you or going to bite your arm off because that's in his nature.
Yeah.
It's in the Browns' nature to let you down.
I guess maybe
Browns big.
Yeah, maybe this alligator is a bit nicer, so I'll go with the Browns too. I think it'll be, I'm going to go Browns big in this one too. The Raiders defense doesn't really, they've been playing well, but not well enough, I think, to limit all the weapons on that offense, and Derek Carr hasn't really been clicking with Amari Cooper, so I'll go Browns big there also. Then we got Seattle heading to Arizona in Josh Rosen's first start. I don't think we pictured, these rookie quarterbacks would be starting as early as they did, but here they are.
Okay, I have no freaking clue who's going to win this game. I really don't. Yeah. I don't even know who these teams are.
Yeah, I agree with you there.
I mean, let's give it I'm going to make it a 21-21 tie for the third tie of the year.
I hope not. I hope you're wrong if that's your pick. I can't take another tie.
You just pull your hair out if it's the third tie this year.
Oh yeah, definitely. Seahawks are currently, I'd say, in a mini rebuild given you got your quarterback that you need. You got a top 5 head coach.
So are the Cardinals in the kind of a rebuild.
Yeah, and the Cardinals, Bradford hasn't looked good. They haven't really been giving the ball to David Johnson too much. I haven't seen Josh Rosen play an NFL down yet, so I have to go with the Seahawks just based on the principle here. They're on the road, but I could see maybe Josh Rosen playing well. But like I said, as far as rookie quarterbacks, I play it safe, so I'll go with Seattle here.
I'm still sticking to 21-21 tie. The Cardinals have not proven that they realize that the memo has not gotten out that they have David Johnson. And so they're giving David Johnson like 10 carries, which it should be 10 carries a quarter or 10 carries a half. They're barely giving David Johnson, letting him touch the ball. He should be he should be running the ball and touching the ball out of the backfield, and they're doing nothing with that. They're at home. These two teams are just a mess. Like I said, 21-21 tie. And
the bad thing is I can't say you're completely wrong because we could very well get another tie. Then we got the Saints heading to New York facing off with the Giants. The Saints, haven't really been as impressive as we thought, but they're 2-1, starting to play better ball considering the game last week. The Giants look like one of the worst teams in the NFC East. I think this is a fairly easy pick for me. I'm going with New Orleans here. What about you?
Book me for the rest of the year voting against the Giants. I just think the Giants are just lost. Eli is not playing well. Saquon has showed to be the real deal, but they're not even getting the ball to Odell like they should. Do you agree?
Yeah, definitely. Eli just looks like it's time to possibly hang him up, I'd say.
Defensively, are you impressed by their defense this year?
They're okay.
That's exactly. Poor offense, okay defense. I'm just not seeing anything. New Orleans is just a much better team, New Orleans.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And then for the final game of this segment, before we move on to the third and preview the Sunday night game, you got the 49ers without Jimmy Garoppolo heading to LA facing off with the Chargers. I mean, we saw what the 49ers looked like last year with CJ Beathard as their starting quarterback. Didn't win a game until Garoppolo got there. I'm going with Phillip Rivers and the Chargers here. What about you?
Chargers big.
Yeah.
This is a broken team, meaning spiritually broken. You know, they had a lot of hope with Garoppolo, the fan base. That was a big letdown. I don't see them coming back, and the Chargers are a really good team.
Yeah, Chargers actually my pick to make it out the AFC. I mean, that's a big risk by me, but we'll see if they could prove me right.
It's not that crazy because I'm actually leaning toward I've made a couple picks, but I'm always stuck between the Jaguars and the Chargers on who's going to make it to the Super Bowl. Not a crazy pick.
Just a matter of if Phillip Rivers can win those big games come playoff time, but we'll see what ends up happening as the season progresses. We're going to go ahead and wrap it up here. Like I said, Tate and I will be previewing the Sunday night game between the Ravens and Steelers in the third segment, so stay tuned for that. And like I said, we will be right back.
The average sedan is built with a steel frame and equipped with 6 airbags. Remember this the next time you see someone walking. Drivers, be aware. Pedestrians don't have armor. A message from the California Office of Traffic Safety.
All right, and welcome back to the GSMC Football Podcast. So far today, Tate and I have covered the recap of the Rams and Vikings Thursday night game. Obviously, with the Rams winning that one 38-31. Very good game there. Second segment, we made our picks for the early games, meaning for the East Coast people, 1 o'clock and 4 o'clock games. For the West Coast people, the 10 o'clock and 1 o'clock games. Now we move on to the third segment, and we will give our thoughts on the upcoming Sunday night one between the Baltimore Ravens and Pittsburgh Steelers. Not really what it used to be with Hines Ward going up against guys like Ed Reed and all, but it's still got some fire in this rivalry.
No, this game has some serious implications here because the big question that everyone's been talking about is what's going on with the Steelers? Are the Steelers are they back because they just had their first win, or are they a team that's falling apart? I'll give you my opinion on that in a second. And then you have the Ravens, which it's just weird. Joe Flacco found you have some competition with Joe Flacco, and Joe Flacco's actually playing well.
Yeah, as crazy as that sounds, it's been years since I think we've been able to say that.
Yeah, I with Joe Flacco, even though he's playing well, I feel like he's on borrowed time.
I mean, you might be right. You look at it, if this team, and that's always been the case with the Ravens, they've never really been a team with a great quarterback. They've never had great receivers. I mean, the last great running back I'd say they had was Ray Rice, but if you want to talk truly solid, I'd say Jamal Lewis was probably the best running back that they've had in a while.
I was just going to say, they haven't really had a real running game since Ray Rice.
Yeah. And, I mean, this is one of those teams, if they get in the playoffs, the defense is what's going to get them there. And Flacco's always been solid, but if Flacco and the Ravens are able to make a nice little run in the postseason, I mean, you can't really put it past them considering they're kind of like the New York Giants of the AFC, where you get them into the playoffs and they'll do something. Flacco, I'd say I don't know. I have no clue, honestly.
It's time. If I was the Ravens, it's time to move on from Flacco after this year. But he is playing at a very high level, and he's trying to keep the two quarterbacks off the field.
I feel that Flacco got real complacent with his job the last 3 years, considering he had no quarterback right behind him. It was just pretty much, you're the guy, just go out, play well, and you'll be the guy next year.
And the thing about it is, when you look at the Ravens, it's not the rookie who I think is the best quarterback on this staff. It's actually crazy. RG3 is the best quarterback on this staff.
No, I agree with you there. Lamar Jackson, I always thought he was my favorite quarterback coming into the draft, just mainly because I think he's a dual threat type, but he does need to work as far as accuracy issues, throwing, and all that. He's a 2 to 3 year project, I'd say. And as of right now, as far as football ability, playing in the quarterback position, yeah, I'd take RG3 over Lamar Jackson.
You know, they've been putting Lamar Jackson out there on some type gimmick plays, and I think that's when they're horrible. I do not like that they're putting him out there on gimmick plays, because have you seen any of them work? Not one.
I can't stand them either. I figure when you throw Lamar Jackson out there and you got him on the same field as Joe Flacco, you're basically, the defense knows you're playing 10 on 11 at that point.
Yes, and because when Flacco goes out a receiver, he just stands there.
Yeah,
it's funny that we're butchering the Ravens, and
they're 2-1.
Yeah, they're 2-1, and the Steelers is where everyone's been talking about. No Le'Veon Bell. What's going on with the Steelers? They finally get their win, and you talk about all the big question about, you know, are the Steelers back? And that question, first off, what do you think? Do you think the Steelers are back?
I think the Steelers are competitive. For me to say they're back means they're a top team in the AFC. I don't think I can say that right now. I think right now, honestly, they're playing like they're an 8-8 team, I'd say. Okay.
The Steelers are playing about where I thought they would be at right now. The Steelers aren't as good as people think. I don't think with the whole concept of are they back, because I don't think they ever left. I think when everything happened with Le'Veon Bell, it was really no shocker that Le'Veon Bell wasn't going to come back. I think a lot of the players were convinced that he was going to come back beforehand, but it just didn't make sense as far as financially for him to come back. If I'm Le'Veon Bell, I don't show up until week 10. But you look at Pittsburgh, they have a decent running game. They still have, you still have Ben Roethlisberger, Antonio Brown. And since this whole situation with Le'Veon Bell, Pittsburgh has kind of shut up. The media hasn't shut up, but Pittsburgh has stopped talking about Le'Veon Bell. They removed him off their depth chart, and they're moving on. I just don't know if they are an elite team. You're so used to saying they're an elite team, but I don't know if they are.
Le'Veon Bell, I think, has done a good enough job as far as the national media to cover him instead of the real problem there, which I think is their defense.
Yes, I agree with you big time.
I think the real problem with this team and why they haven't been playing well isn't because Le'Veon isn't there, because James Conner has done a well enough job to not obviously play up to the standard of a Le'Veon Bell, but just to be a serviceable running back there. I mean, they're giving up 30 points a game nearly.
I was just going to say, offensively, you can't, if you just looked at the stat lines and you just looked at the way they've played and you take all the names off the field, offensively, they haven't missed a beat. They're not really missing Le'Veon Bell, in my opinion. Defensively, they are missing everything.
Yeah, because you look at it, I mean, we can even date back to last year. I mean, they gave up 45 points to Jacksonville, and I think that was only like the second time they've had any scoring total that close. And it's Blake Bortles also, so I mean, he's no Tom Brady or anything like that. The defense is what's been killing them, and if the defense can't really pick it up, can we really assume that this team is going to win that AFC North as they have done for what feels like a while?
Okay, I'm going to say something that's absolutely crazy. Right now, as far as the caliber of play that's going on, the Steelers are the worst team in their division. And I'm going to tell you this, Bengals, they're balling. The Ravens are 2-1, and they're playing solid Ravens football.
That's exactly what I was going to say right now.
And the Browns should be 3-0 and in first place in that division. And they're playing football. They're playing quality football on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, you could tell the Browns are starting to finally figure it out, meaning they were playing competitive, good football, but now it seems like they have the formula to where we can play good, winning football now.
Yes.
And the Steelers, they haven't played well, and can't really say they're putting it together yet. So I do agree with you. They do look like the worst team currently in that division. I mean, they had no business tying that game with Cleveland.
Oh, they clearly lost that game.
Yeah, they should have. It's just
their kicker,
that's just where the alligator
stole his homework. He had scoliosis and he fainted.
That's just where the alligator bites at that point with Cleveland, I guess. Like Cleveland,
that was that famous alligator just reached up and bit his arm.
Yeah. So I mean, Steelers haven't looked great. As far as the game goes, I'm not really sure who to pick here because the Steelers have an awful defense. We know that, but do the Ravens have a good enough offense to exploit that defense?
That's the question. That's the question. I'm pulling my hair out, and I refuse to go another 21-21 tie because then I would give you permission to club me over the head.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go first. I'm taking the Ravens.
You're taking the Ravens in this one? I mean, it's an AFC North matchup Sunday night. Pittsburgh's at home.
The reason why, let me tell you why I'm taking the Ravens. It's a Sunday night primetime game. And the one thing that the Ravens have always done, Suggs and those guys, when it comes to playing Pittsburgh and New England on a primetime game, they get hyped for it and they play hard. That's the reason why I'm taking the Ravens.
I think I'm going to go with Baltimore here also. I think Baltimore's defense is good enough to keep Pittsburgh's offense in check. And I think going out on a limb here, I think I'm going to be able to trust Flacco and assume he's going to get them at least 20 points in this one. I think if they score at least 20, then the Ravens will be able to take it. And you mentioned Suggs. People forget the guy's been around since 2003, and he's still playing really well.
No, he's playing fantastic.
Yeah. So, I mean, it'll be a tough game. I'm hoping maybe – I really do miss the rivalry with Ed Reed, Palomalu, and all
Oh, no,
guys.
yeah, back in the days, yes.
That's definitely when it was at its best. You got Jerome Pettis running up and down the field. I mean, basically.
The nice thing about this is this rivalry has gone on from the beginning.
Yeah.
Ever since the Ravens have come into the NFL, it's been the Ravens and the Steelers going at it. And even though these teams are starting to fall back a little bit, that rivalry isn't dying off, though.
Yeah, and if the Ravens are able to jump out to a 3-1 record, I mean, we got to think if they could be a playoff team. I mean, Flacco, we've kind of been hesitant on him, but maybe like the old Ravens are back, possibly.
Listen, I'm telling you, I am not sleeping on the Browns whatsoever. If the Browns can pull off a win this week, that take them to 2-1-1. The Bengals are playing well, but I don't trust the Bengals. But that division is up for grabs.
Definitely,
and there's and I know it's crazy to say, including the Browns, anyone can win this division.
I feel like we're going to be a little surprised, too, when it comes into the season and we're seeing who ends up winning it. I mean, we could be the Browns. Maybe, Baker Mayfield last Thursday against the Jets seemed like he had that it factor type.
And it's a situation with Baker Mayfield where I always like when you bring in a young rookie quarterback that first year, there's not a lot of film on Baker Mayfield right now. That's an opportunity for a good Browns team to get a lot of extra points that they would not normally go and get. The Browns could go for a little run. Cincinnati's playing well. Like I said, it's anyone's division.
Yeah, Baker Mayfield, once he came into that second half, you could tell he added something Cleveland hasn't had in a while, and that's basically hope.
Yes.
It seems like the players on offense are pretty much bought in with him being their guy.
The thing about it is that when I watch the Browns and you listen to the Browns, they believe. They believe that it's not like, oh, we hope we can win this one or we're doing better. No, they believe they're good enough that they're a playoff team right now.
Yeah, so it's going to be interesting to see how this AFC North plays out for the rest of the season, but we'll go ahead and wrap it up here. As for the next segment, Tate and I will be talking about any other NFL news or anything that crosses our mind as far as the NFL goes. So stay tuned, and we will be right back.
The average SUV has 2 blind spots, weighs between 4,000 and 6,000 pounds, and takes about 6 seconds to stop. Remember this the next time you're on foot. Pay attention, people. Pedestrians don't have armor. A message from the California Office of Traffic Safety.
All right, and welcome back to the GSMC Football Podcast. This will be the last segment I am hosting for a while. I mean, who knows? Maybe I could end up finding my way back here eventually.
The door's always open for you. I'm sure there's always something, either janitorial service, on air. There's something for you.
I'm pretty good with a mop and a broom, so we'll see. But yeah, so far today, Tate and I have talked Thursday Night Football. We've made our picks in the second segment. Third segment, we talked Steelers, Ravens, and even got into a little bit more of the AFC North. Let's go ahead and stick around there. I haven't really gotten your thoughts as far as Le'Veon Bell or anything like that. Let me ask you, do you think that he plays it down for the Steelers this season, or if he does play this season, will it be for another team?
Le'Veon Bell, I just don't see him coming back to Pittsburgh. I think they will trade him. Mm-hmm. I think don't be shocked if the Jets were to pull off another win or two, that the Jets don't make a full run at it. Right now, I think a lot of teams are lowballing the Steelers, where you're looking at a third or fourth round pick for Le'Veon Bell. Uh-huh. So I think right now Steelers are staying pat, but you have a situation where when you look at the teams that are considering him, and who have you heard so far?
The Jets are a team I've heard. We talked yesterday about
Philadelphia.
I haven't heard Indianapolis yet, but I'm assuming eventually they will get into the mix.
Okay. So when you look at, I think Indianapolis is a perfect fit for them. Mm-hmm. Andrew Luck not having the firepower in his shoulder like he used to, having a running back that can come out of the backfield that is just like another wide receiver, an extra tight end, is a very valuable thing for him. Like I said, if the Jets win a couple more games, the Jets, I think, will definitely make a run at them because their division is up for grabs. Right now it is. Mm-hmm. And the Patriots look vulnerable. And then Philadelphia has the room to bring him on and to make a Super Bowl run. I really like that one. I'm going to bring up a fourth option that I think is absolutely crazy. But I was listening to the Will Cain show from ESPN, and he's a known Cowboy fan, uh-huh. And he brought up an interesting fact, and I agree with him. He said the Cowboys should go after Le'Veon Bell. Jesse, you should see the look. Jesse just cut his eye at me like if he had a samurai sword, he would just chop my head off right then and there. What are we going to say first, and then I'll clarify?
I don't really have words for that one. I really don't.
Left you speechless on that one.
You did. I mean, you're going to have to explain to me how this works and makes sense, I guess, because I know.
Okay, here's the reason why. At first, when I heard him say that, I'm like, are you out your darn mind? But it makes sense. Look at the Dallas Cowboys right now. The Dallas Cowboys, because of the way they're set up, they can't score with anyone. Uh-huh. Their defense is suspect. Well, in order for the Cowboys have too many holes to make wholesale changes mid-season to make them a major player. But one thing you can do about the Cowboys is make their scheme and make their offense different than everyone else, where you're no longer gearing up for that high-powered traditional offense. You're gearing up for a team who can, with a Dak Prescott, where you're talking about two receiving backs out of the backfield, where there's a lot of screen plays, a lot of touches to Ezekiel Elliott and Le'Veon Bell in the passing game, two solid guys in the running game. The Cowboys need a tight end, so you can actually put a situation where you got two backs in the backfield that works like a tight end. You can put them in motion, put Le'Veon at tight end at some point. It makes it so your two biggest weapons on the field are in your backfield and made perfect for your quarterback, who has a lot of dink and dunk going on.
You made a lot of sense there, but I still think it's crazy. It's just Le'Veon.
You said it could be any topic, so I threw you a curveball.
Like I said, this is why the fourth segment is usually the funnest and the best. But
you weren't prepared for it all.
Yeah, I mean, As far as money-wise, it makes sense. Zeke Elliott is on a rookie deal. Dak's on a rookie deal. The right receivers, they're not.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, as far as money-wise, it makes sense. Zeke Elliott is on a rookie deal. Dak's on a rookie deal. The right receivers, they're not paying anything.
But do you see how this makes the Cowboys different than everyone else? The only way that the Cowboys can contend this year with the way the NFC is established is to do things differently than everyone else. And this would be different than everyone else because you don't know where it's coming from. Zeke can be in the slot, Zeke can be at tight end. They can both be in the backfield. They can both catch out of the backfield. Both can block very well. You have two guys that are in position where you can move them all over the field, and it makes it very hard where your two most dangerous weapons are hidden behind the backfield.
Yeah, I mean,
and there's nobody else doing anything like this.
If Dallas, let's say Jerry Jones actually has thought about this, and he does have an idea. I mean, would Le'Veon be just a 1-year rental, or is there a long-term play here?
I just came up with this,
Yeah.
You listen to Will Kane and just I kind of started thinking about this and how you line that up. That is, we're talking about pie in the sky here. I don't see this really happening.
Yeah.
But I think it's a winning strategy because of what they have right now, doing the same thing over and over again for the Cowboys is going to be a disaster. They don't have the receivers to compete on a playoff on a playoff run, especially in the division that they're in.
I mean, if you were to add Le'Veon Bell to that team, it does make them much better on offense. You basically got two guys where it's like, oh well,
it makes it hard to deal with.
Yeah.
How do you scheme if you're used to in a situation where if you're used to controlling the offenses of the current NFL? Mm-hmm. And you have a situation, you got Le'Veon Bell and Ezekiel Elliott in the backfield, and you see them stack the line, and you audible out, and you put one at the slot, and one comes out of the back. I mean, one goes in at tight end. You have a mismatch there.
Yeah, definitely.
Or if you put a situation where they line up empty backfield, rotate, and then move Ezekiel to the backfield, you have a situation where you have too many safeties and corners on the field on a running play. It makes them very they're not predictable at all. It's an interesting approach.
And I'd say you add Le'Veon Bell to that team. I mean, that makes Dak insanely better, considering Dak's not a guy who really goes down the field too much. He's more of a safe quarterback. And I think Le'Veon Bell, I mean, the dude's basically a running back and a slot receiver at the same time.
You're dumping off the two of the best receiving running backs in the NFL.
Getting him into open space. I mean, it's crazy. Like you said, it probably won't happen, but if Dallas was to do it, they're a much better team because of it.
How would you feel if you saw Le'Veon Bell with the ball in open field?
I'm going to tell the other guy to go tackle him or...
Ezekiel Elliott with the ball in open field.
Tell coach I can't be out here right now.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It makes them very different than everyone else in the NFC.
Mm-hmm.
And with their current plan, they're not good enough to make the playoffs.
Yeah.
But... it's kind of like when the Dolphins started doing the Wildcat.
Mm-hmm.
It was so radically different that it made teams have a hard time adjusting to that type of offense. It's a possibility that it would work. When they had Tim Tebow in Denver, the reason why Tim Tebow worked in Denver was because no one else was playing football quite like Denver was.
Yeah, I mean, that offense in Denver was pretty much just basic as it could be, but it worked for Tebow.
Right. It makes teams that, you're preparing for Aaron Rodgers, and you're preparing for Matt Ryan and Ryan Fitzpatrick, and yes, I did say that. And
yeah, I mean, you have to this year.
You understand where I'm coming from? And Carson Wentz. And then the Cowboys roll in with Ezekiel Elliott and Le'Veon Bell in the backfield and Captain Dink and Dunk hitting them coming out of the backfield and in the slot.
And that makes the receivers better at that point. I mean, right now I'd say they don't have that. They probably have the worst receiving core in the league. But, I mean, you had Le'Veon Bell back there. Defense is too busy game planning for Zeke and Bell. You're leaving guys like
everybody's
Hearns.
Forgetting about Cole Beasley and Allen Hearns at that point.
And all those guys. So, I mean... It would make them better. I mean, I wonder if Jerry Jones has actually thought about this.
Maybe Jerry, you need to listen to the show. This is some good information here.
Yeah.
Doesn't sound as crazy when you start breaking it down, does it?
Yeah, no, it doesn't. I mean, it's a Jerry Jones move. It is.
And you talking about grabbing a headline? Jerry Jones picks up Trace for Le'Veon Bell, gives a 3rd-round pick, and
some conditional 6.
A conditional 6. That is headline. And Jerry's more than willing to pay his own players.
Yeah.
It could work. And there's even when you look at the following year, there's still, you can't duplicate what the Cowboys have, because you can't go out and duplicate a Ezekiel Elliott, Le'Veon Bell backfield.
Yeah,
you can't duplicate that.
You can't have 2 of the best 3 running backs on the same team.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's not possible.
The Cowboys have a unique situation where it could work.
That's the reason why I like it.
I don't hate that idea. I don't hate it. At first, when you mentioned it,
you went from samurai sword chopping my head off to on board.
Yeah, you might have something there. You got any other? I don't even know what to call that idea. You got any other of those before we wrap up today's show?
I threw you at such a curveball that I'll leave. If there's anything else, it's your day. You know what? I do have one other thing I'm going to say. Since it's your last day here, and we were in the back office, and we're like, oh, you know what? We should get Jesse a cake. And it was like, no, Jesse won't eat cake because Jesse doesn't eat anything. So no one ever got. I feel bad. No one got Jesse a cake or anything.
I'm not a cake person
because
anyway.
Jesse doesn't eat anything. He only eats football and air and nothing else. So we didn't even know what to do for him for his last day. So we didn't get him anything, which I feel bad.
No, that's fine. I mean, I go to birthday parties. I'm not eating the cake or anything like that.
Why don't you eat cake or anything?
I eat. It's just when I'm here, I'm more into the zone, ready to get these shows off.
Honestly, as long as you've been here, have you ever eaten anything here once?
Not
Brought something
here.
in?
Not here. Usually when I get done here, I'll go home and get something.
Okay, so you do.
Yeah.
Okay.
I eat.
I just picture you like in front in a lounge chair with like 14 TVs on, all playing sports, and you have just IVs in your arms.
I mean, that could work, but
yeah. See, I gave him another weird thing. And he's like, can I do that?
Maybe I'm just a robot. It just lives off of football and sports, I guess. But I mean, I don't have anything to add here. It's been fun, definitely doing this show. This has been one of my favorites. And I'd say that little Le'Veon Bell to the Cowboys idea is a good one to end this final show on, at least for me.
It is an honor and a privilege to be on your last football show with you.
Yeah, definitely. It's been fun. Thank you for having me here. But yeah, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up here for today. So today, Tate and I talked Thursday night football, made our picks for Sunday's matchups, previewed Sunday night football, and talked about the idea of Le'Veon Bell to the Cowboys. I mean, it's been fun, like I said. So for those of you that have listened to the show while I've been here, thanks. I mean, glad I've had sub-listeners, and I feel like I've gotten a little bit better at this whole podcasting thing over the years.
Yes, absolutely. You're fantastic.
Yeah, so for final time, thanks for listening to the GSMC Football Podcast. I am your host, Jesse Tapia. Thanks again, Tate, for being on the show today.
It's my pleasure.
And I'll probably talk to you guys eventually, so I'll see you guys later.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.